I think the number one most important thing is to be able to discern our own voice from the voices of others, to get to our real truth.
It's Wednesday, and the window is open. In this extended conversation, Walt Morgan and Dr. Karla discuss how leaders develop as teams grow. Let's listen in.
One of the surprises I see a lot of leaders have when they get into these higher positions is the loneliness that they feel. What do you think the biggest surprise is for many of your clients?
Hmm. I think the biggest surprise is the value of relationships. And I think in their minds they know that, so it shouldn't be a surprise. But the reality of it is surprising. Like the chart that I saw shows that in an entry level individual contributor position in a corporate setting, success in the role is 90% technical contribution and 10% relationship. But by the time 20 years down the road that they're VPs, that's completely reversed. It is 10% technical knowledge and ability and 90% relationships. Well, that is a significant shift. What kind of relationships? True, authentic relationships that invite perspective, that allow us to really kind of, when things get strategic, they get messy, right? It's no longer the controlled world of management of the down and in. The up and out is a messy place. And when we get into that messiness, having shared perspectives and having each other's back and being able to work with others in not prescribed ways, but in relationship based ways is critical to the success of ourselves and of our organizations. And so I think the reality of what it really means to be relationship based is the big surprise. That's really how they spend. That's how successful senior executives spend their time, is in the creation of relationship.
Now, when you're talking about relationships and relationship based, you're not talking about networking in general, are you?
It's yes, and right. It's throughout an organization, for one, vertically and especially laterally throughout an organization. But when relationships extend beyond the organization, those are important relationships too. How often do we rely on those relationships? And I'm not, so here's maybe the distinction we can make, Carla. When I think about networking, I'm thinking about a relationship that helps me. And when I'm talking about strategic relationships, I'm talking about relationships that help us, right? Something bigger, something more important, something more collective. Those are the relationships. So networking feels a little bit about self,
Yeah.
and I'm talking about something that is more broad in its ability to create something important.
So, when prioritizing all the different things that come up for these leaders, where would you put this?
Relationship building, it's a top three. You know what I think number one is?
What?
Now that you asked that question, I think the number one most important thing is to be able to discern our own voice from the voices of others, to get to our real truth. Um, it sounds interesting, but it's surprising how many people I ask the question, how do you distinguish your voice from the voice of others? And they don't have an answer, at least not at the beginning of coaching. They don't hear their own voice clearly. And without hearing their own voice, our executives are constantly um, reacting to the voices of others. And I'm not saying the voices of others aren't important. In fact, just a minute ago, I said they were. Relationship building is so important. And it must be balanced with our own truth. I like to say that leaders are built from the inside out. And if we don't know what's inside, if we don't have access to what's inside, then we can't build that outward.
How would you get to that point of finding your own voice?
Yeah, it's a great question. It takes a lot of practice because in many of my clients, that voice is unseen at the beginning of a coaching engagement. So it's really through inquiry and practice. So, what was your truth in that moment? I don't know. Like, okay, what did you hear? What did you hear in that moment? I heard this, 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 and this. Now, where was that coming from? well, it was coming from this interest, from this interest, from this leader, from this person, from this. Okay, where's your voice in there? I didn't hear it. Okay, that's okay, right? We aren't like everything about coaching is meeting our clients where they are. If a client is struggling to hear their voice in that moment or at all, that's fine. So let's co-create a practice. So once a day, when this happens, take several deep breaths and really listen for your truth. What are the sensations of seeking for your truth? What did you hear? On a scale of 1 to 10, how certain are you that that was your own voice, aligned with your own values and with your own truth? Okay, so now once we're connected to our truth, that's really what grounding is. I know who I am in this moment. Many executives don't have access to that. You can't really ground if you don't know your truth. So let's first learn to discern our truth, and then from that comes our confidence to assert our truth. And in when we can know our truth and assert our truth, now we can be better in relationship also. It allows us to respect the truth of others. It allows us to work together to create something of value. It allows us to be part of a team that is greater than the sum of its parts. But it begins with our own voice and acknowledging it and then owning it.
When you're first starting with somebody and they have been working off the truth and the voices of those around them for, maybe 40 years, 50 years, 60 years, depending on how old they are, right? And you're trying to help them take a couple breaths, find that voice. Which one are you actually hearing? How do you take that, or how do you help them take that and cement it into their system and into their identity?
Yeah, so all the work I do is designed to be sustainable, right, for my clients. So I guess a better way to say that is all of the work my clients do is designed to be sustainable, which it means it has to be embodied through a series of practices. So there might be 9 weeks of practice of just different, or 6 months of practice even, of just different iterations at getting to that voice. But when you talk about somebody who's been responsive to the voices of others for 40 years, what a beautiful question, because what a beautiful gift. The attunement to the voices of others, that's a superpower. What a beautiful, and I think part of this is just to honor that power. You have a gift of attunement. You truly hear others. You recognize what they need. You're very quick to support them in what they need. What a beautiful gift. Let's honor that. What would be possible if you were able to recognize your own voice and assert it also? And it's not for me to say, it's for the client to say. What would that make possible for you? What would be different if, in all of your attunement, you didn't lose the beauty of your attunement, but in addition to that, you could identify your own voice and assert it? What would that make possible? And, and for those who have lost their voice to the voice of others, some really powerful things show up. And once they practice it and they can see, like, so their greatest fear will not be realized, essentially, right? So they're going to practice this and in a really manageable, controlled way. And their fear that if I don't give everybody what they want, I won't be valued, or if I don't create harmony, then I will be disliked, or whatever, whatever that fear is. Once they practice this thing, that fear is not going to be realized. And then they will realize, oh, this fear was unfounded. I feel more safe speaking my truth. I was afraid if I spoke my truth that my truth would be rejected. I wouldn't be accepted. That I would be laughed at. That my ideas wouldn't be valued. That I wouldn't be valued. But they always, when I say always, Karla, I mean 100% always discover that their fear was unfounded. And once they get past that fear, then they're clear to move forward.